Imagine a garden where your soil consistently stays at the ideal temperature, promoting healthier, more vigorous plants without constant fuss. This isn't a dream, it's the power of the ancient Korean Jangdokdae technique. Unlock the enduring benefits of this ingenious method and see how traditional wisdom can revolutionize your modern gardening practices. Unearthing ancient soil secrets. Picture a traditional Korean courtyard where rows of large earthenware vessels sit elevated on stone platforms, their curved forms catching the morning sun while their thick walls shield precious contents from the brutal cold of winter nights. These are Jangdokdae, fermentation crocks that have graced Korean homes for thousands of years. But here's what most gardeners don't realize. These weren't just storage containers. They were sophisticated thermal regulation systems that maintained remarkably stable temperatures through the most extreme weather conditions, and their principles hold transformative potential for how we approach soil temperature management in our gardens today. The Jangdokdae system represents one of humanity's most elegant solutions to temperature control, developed long before electricity or modern insulation materials. Korean families relied on these vessels to ferment kimchi soy sauce and other staples throughout harsh winters, where temperatures plunged well below freezing and sweltering summers that could spoil food in hours. The fact that these fermentations succeeded consistently, maintaining the precise temperature ranges needed for beneficial microorganisms to thrive, speaks to an understanding of thermal dynamics that we're only now beginning to appreciate in modern sustainable agriculture. When we look at the challenges facing today's gardeners, unpredictable temperature swings, late frosts, early heat waves, and the need to extend growing seasons without excessive energy inputs, the Jangdokdae offers us a blueprint that's been field-tested for millennia. The science behind the stone. The genius of the Jangdokdae system lies in the remarkable properties of onggi, the traditional Korean earthenware from which these vessels were crafted. Unlike the glazed ceramics we commonly use today, onggi is made from specific clay bodies that are fired at temperatures between 1,100 and 1,200 degrees Celsius, creating a porous yet sturdy structure. This porosity is absolutely crucial. It allows the material to breathe, permitting air and moisture exchange while simultaneously acting as a thermal battery. When temperatures rise during the day, the thick earthenware walls absorb heat slowly and steadily, preventing the rapid temperature spikes that can stress plants and soil microorganisms. As night falls and ambient temperatures drop, these same walls release their stored warmth, gradually creating a buffer against sudden cold snaps that would otherwise shock delicate root systems. You know, the traditional placement of Jangdokdae actually reveals an equally sophisticated understanding of passive solar design and microclimate creation. So, these vessels were typically arranged on elevated stone platforms called Jangdokdae tool. They were positioned in the sunniest part of the courtyard, usually facing south, just to maximize solar exposure throughout the day. The elevation served multiple purposes. It improved air circulation around the vessels, prevented ground moisture from affecting the fermentation process, and created a thermal gradient that enhanced the natural convection currents around each pot. Also, the spacing between vessels was carefully considered too, allowing air to flow freely while creating small pockets of moderated temperature. Some households would partially bury larger vessels or surround them with straw or rice husks during winter, adding layers of insulation that further stabilized internal temperatures. This wasn't guesswork, it was empirical knowledge refined across countless generations, with families passing down specific techniques for their local climate conditions. Beyond the Jangdokdae, modern applications. So how can we translate these time-honored principles into practical solutions for contemporary gardens facing the increasingly erratic weather patterns of our changing climate? The beauty of the Jangdokdae approach is its scalability and adaptability to virtually any growing situation. If you're working with raised beds or in-ground gardens, consider incorporating large unglazed terracotta or ceramic vessels directly into your planting areas. These don't need to be authentic Korean onggi. Any thick-walled, breathable ceramic will serve the purpose. Position them strategically among your most temperature-sensitive plants, partially burying them if you're in a region with harsh winters. During the day, these thermal masses will absorb excess heat that might otherwise stress shallow-rooted crops, then release it slowly through the night, extending the viable growing temperature window by several crucial hours. For container gardeners or those with limited space, the principle scales down beautifully. Choose substantial terracotta pots over plastic or glazed ceramics whenever possible, particularly for perennials and cold-sensitive herbs. Group your containers together rather than spacing them out. This creates a microclimate where the collective thermal mass of all the pots works synergistically, just as the traditional Jangdokdae arrangement did. So, on your patio or balcony, positioning these containers against south-facing walls actually mimics the solar orientation of traditional Korean courtyards. This way, the wall itself acts as an extra heat sink during sunny days. And, during those unexpected cold snaps, draping a lightweight row cover over grouped containers creates an insulated pocket, where the pot's stored warmth can protect your plants much more effectively than if they were just left isolated. The environmental and economic advantages of these passive temperature regulation methods really become more apparent when you consider the alternative approaches that most gardeners usually default to. Electric heating mats, propane heaters for greenhouse spaces, and even the energy costs of hauling plants indoors. These all represent ongoing expenses and carbon footprints that, honestly, add up season after season. By contrast, thermal mass systems require only an initial investment in appropriate materials, then provide benefits year after year with zero operating costs. The improved soil temperature stability also has cascading benefits throughout your garden ecosystem. Beneficial soil microorganisms, earthworms, and mycorrhizal fungi all function more efficiently when temperature fluctuations are minimized. This leads to better nutrient cycling, improved soil structure, and ultimately, more resilient plants that can better withstand pest pressure and disease. Case studies and future vision. Contemporary gardeners and small-scale farmers are already rediscovering and adapting these principles with remarkable results. Consider the approach taken by regenerative farmers in temperate climates who are installing large ceramic vessels in strategic locations throughout their market gardens. These modern practitioners are finding something quite interesting. They report that temperature-sensitive crops like tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants actually show measurably better fruit set and more consistent ripening when they're grown in proximity to these thermal mass elements. So, here's an intriguing example. An urban gardener in a northern climate documented that soil temperatures around her ceramic vessels remained 5 to 7 degrees warmer on those frosty spring mornings. This was compared to unprotected areas just 10 feet away. And well, this difference meant the survival of her early planted seedlings, while her neighbors, unfortunately, lost theirs to those unexpected late frosts. Now, looking toward larger-scale applications, there's a growing interest in how Jangdokdae principles might inform the design of more sustainable greenhouse and high tunnel systems. It's quite an exciting prospect, don't you think? So rather than relying entirely on fossil fuel heating or those electricity-hungry climate control systems, some innovative growers are, incorporating substantial thermal mass elements. We're talking about large water-filled containers, stone or concrete walls, and yes, even traditional-style ceramic vessels, all to help moderate temperature swings passively. As we move deeper into an era where sustainable agriculture really has to balance productivity with environmental responsibility, these ancient methods actually offer some proven pathways forward. The wisdom embedded in the Jangdokdae system honestly reminds us that effective solutions don't always require cutting-edge technology. Sometimes, the most resilient approaches have been sitting in plain sight for thousands of years, just waiting for us to recognize their value all over again. Your garden's new secret weapon. Imagine your garden thriving year-round, resistant to temperature swings, all thanks to a forgotten secret that costs far less than a single season's worth of heating bills. Starting this technique in your own growing space is simpler than you might think. Begin by identifying your garden's most vulnerable areas. Those spots where late spring frosts always seem to strike first, or where summer heat becomes overwhelming by midday. Introduce unglazed ceramic elements into these zones, whether that's repurposing large terracotta pots, investing in authentic onggi if you can find them, or even working with local potters to create custom pieces suited to your specific needs. So, take some time to observe how your plants respond over a full season. Pay attention to things like germination rates, flowering times, and just the overall vigor, especially when you compare them to areas that aren't protected. The key to success with this approach, just like with the original Jangdokdae system, really lies in thoughtful placement and, honestly, a bit of patience. These aren't, instant fixes, but they're fundamental improvements to your garden's infrastructure that will build value as time goes on. If you're curious about the measurable differences, go ahead and track your soil temperatures. But honestly, what's even more important is to just watch your plants themselves. You'll likely notice that crops near your thermal mass elements show less transplant shock, recover more quickly from weather stress, and, maintain more consistent growth rates throughout the season. As you experiment and refine your approach, you're actually joining a lineage of gardeners stretching back thousands of years, all working with the same fundamental forces of thermodynamics and seasonal cycles. Hey, don't keep this knowledge to yourself. Try sharing your experiments and results with fellow gardeners, whether that's through your local gardening club, online communities, or, even right here in the comments. Go ahead and subscribe to the Living Soil Lab to keep exploring how ancient agricultural wisdom can solve modern growing challenges. And, don't forget to share this video with anyone who's just tired of fighting against temperature extremes in their garden. Together, we're building a community that really values time-tested solutions and understands that the most sustainable path forward often means, looking backward to the accumulated knowledge of those who gardened in harmony with natural systems rather than against them. Your soil, your plants, and all the countless microorganisms that make healthy gardens possible will thank you for embracing these thermal principles that, honestly, have stood the test of time.